Hello and welcome to Life Harmony Talk with Business Leaders. The Life Harmony Talk is an initiative that drives the conversation around sustainable performance by encouraging leaders in business to embrace harmony of life within themselves while contributing to harmony of life within our planet. I'm Jesmine Onyeukwu, the host of the talk, and this talk has been brought to you by the Organizing Academy. This first series is in celebration of Mother Earth Day 2020 and is supported by the Global Institute for Conscious Economics. Thank you for tuning in. Please join my guests as they share their stories and strategies around finding and embracing harmony of life.
Welcome to the Life Harmony Talk with Business Leaders. I'm super excited today that we're launching this conversation. This came to my mind several months ago, but I was thinking, how do I go about it? Who do I bring this conversation to? Who wants to hear this thing? Who wants to hear about this whole thing? We're talking about the conscious economy and sustainable development and all of that. But I'm super excited that we finally get a chance to have this conversation. And I just want to say welcome to anybody who's tuning in live or who gets to tune in to watch the replay. Welcome. First of all, before I go on to introduce our fantastic guest for the day, I just want to answer two questions. So the first question is, why Earth Day and why Female Day? The Earth Day is an observance that was instituted by the United Nations about 25 years after the United Nations was instituted itself. They created this observance to bring attention to the Earth and its inhabitants and the interconnection that exists between all of them. So there are forms of life in our universe that are all interconnected. And what Earth Day does, it could be called Earth Day, Mother Earth Day, International Mother Earth Day. It's just all in one celebration, and it happens on the 22nd of April. And I feel that these are conversations we need to have more, especially in the business community. The second question, why female leaders? So I said to launch this series just talking to people in the female entrepreneurial community who I know are leading and doing great things and who have impact. Why females? Because I'm passionate about females. I don't have any bias whatsoever, but I am passionate about female leadership because I know what we can do as women. And I know that if we bring our game, we can make a change. As women, we are natural nurturers. We know how to care for things. And the conversation around Earth Day and Mother Earth Day, sort of aligns with our nature as women. So that's why female leaders today. Now I'm going to go ahead and do a brief introduction of who our guest for the day is. Guys, I am super blown away. I'm so excited that Rhiannon decided to join me on this conversation. When I messaged her, I sent her a cold pitch. She hadn't met me, she didn't know me, but she read my proposal and said she wanted to be part of this, and I do not take that for granted. Thank you so much, Rhiannon. So I just want to briefly introduce her before I hand it over to her to do a bit of an introduction of herself. Rhiannon is the president and CEO of the Economic Club of Canada, and she's also the founder of the Junior Economic Club of Canada. She is the co-founder and CEO of the Global Institute for Conscious Economics and the Lunar Club. She heads a lot of organizations, guys. She is redefining what it means to be a corporate leader. Rhiannon has sat in rooms with leaders from across the world. I saw her interview with Barack Obama and I was super impressed. She is passionate about highlighting the most important issues our nation is grappling with today. And I can't wait for her to share with us these conversations and the message and the gospel that she has been preaching for the past couple of years. Rhiannon's resume, it's just a whole lot. So I couldn't exhaust everything right now. So I'll let you go over to her website, read up more about her. If you search up about her on Google, you're going to find a lot about her. So I'm going to introduce her now to tell us a bit about herself. First of all, tell us how your day has been and how you're doing so far.
Well, thank you so much for having me. My day is reflected in this toque I wear on my head. Washing your hair isn't a priority in the same way that it was when we were out in the world. And of course, I'm a mother as well as a business owner. So that definitely impacts the way that I live my days right now and always. But it's a pleasure to be here. And it's a true honor to be in celebration with Mother Earth Day with you and all the viewers. It is such an important day to observe, and not just today, but every day. And I'm sure we'll get into that. What would you like me to tell you? Do you want some more information about what we're doing right now?
Yes, whatever you have going on in the works.
Sure. Yeah. So I think I've been the CEO of the Economic Club now for almost a decade. And to be honest with you, it was very unheard of for a young woman to be at the helm of that organization because it's a national public policy platform. We do over 100 events across the country each year with very senior level business executives and policymakers and global thought leaders. And that story and being in that position as a woman, I really feel like it defined my identity, and it defined my idea of conscious economics, because what I was realizing is when I was at the tables with leaders and we were talking about all the important issues that were impacting the country and the world, there was some aspects missing to the conversation. And as I started to gather with more women, and as we started the Lunar Club, which is our women's collective, and of course, my full team is women. So the Economic Club is run by a group of women, which most people don't realize and know. And what's really, really cool about it is that us women, I think we do have a different perspective of business. I think we do have a different perspective on, the major issues of the world. And for me, the economic landscape is colored by issues around equality, inclusion, reconciliation with our indigenous peoples. It's really about sustainability of our planet and our environment. And so as I started to, over the years, formulate these ideas, I realized that there was a gap and that there needed to be a business platform that addressed these. They're linked to feminine, but men and women and everybody, can feel these things. But it's the feminine voice that I think needs to bring some of these issues forward. And so I co-founded the Global Institute for Conscious Economics to create a platform in Canada and around the world where we could really start to talk more deeply about people, planet, and profit working in harmony. So how do we create businesses and how do we create economic infrastructure that supports the well-being of people and the well-being of our planet? And can those things work in harmony with profitable business? And to me, the answer is yes, yes, yes. I believe in corporate citizenship. I believe in the value of social enterprise. So profitable business solving social issues and giving back to community. And that's exactly how I've set up the Economic Club. So we are a social enterprise. And it's just been a really amazing journey and led us to launch. Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry, my little guy just walked in. But that's kind of that in a nutshell. So, yeah, it's interesting work for sure.
Wow, amazing. That's a lot. You're wearing a lot of hats. Your message is powerful, and you're connecting all of these different segments of the society to make sure that the message doesn't die. I'm super proud of you. It's a lot of work, especially when you're talking about something that is not mainstream. It requires a lot of drive. If your motivation is not right, you could easily be discouraged and want to just quit. But I see that you love to talk about it, and I'm super excited to get into this conversation. 19 crisis ongoing. I just want to encourage you to please do everything possible to help us flank this curve. Keep to all the guidelines by all the authorities. Do everything you can to help us protect those who are at the front lines of this serious crisis. Let us help them. They are doing everything they can to help us manage this period. Let's do everything we can to also support their work. So I just wanted to put that out there. If you're listening and if you get to catch the replay during this period, let's all work together so that we can get through this as soon as possible. So Rhiannon, I want to ask you about being a mom, having to have your life disrupted with the current crisis, having to now work from home, manage all of the many moving parts. How has the COVID-19 situation impacted you personally?
Yes. Well, it's deeply impacted my business because our platforms are all event driven. And so our main source of revenue comes from hosting, events. And we do over 100 events a year. So all of those have stopped right now. It's been very, very difficult for my team. And we are, I think, taking a step back right now as an organization. So to be really honest with you, as a mother and as a business owner, just like so many of us, what I have been craving and needing is time. And I almost feel like, as awful as this is, and of course I don't want to undermine the fact that there are people that have lost their lives and there are people that are putting themselves on the front lines, and it's a global pandemic. So I don't want to undermine that. But the beauty that's come from it has been this time, has been this moment to reflect, has been this moment to rest, has been the moment to spend more time with my children. And as I do that, I again kind of redefine what I want to do and how I want to be in the world, even post COVID. And so, of course, we're looking at more ways to connect digitally with our members and our guests. And I think that that's natural. But for me, I'm really trying to use this time to sit with the discomfort, sit with the unease, and really learn more deeply about myself. I was running so fast, and I think so many of us were. And as I see Mother Earth getting this opportunity to breathe, and to sort of reset herself, I think she in return is giving all of the beings on this planet, all her children, the same opportunity to reset. And I really feel that, and it is a gift, and I am grateful for it, although it's not easy. And I'm sure you can attest to that as well. Some days are good and positive. Other days I'm crying, I'm feeling frustrated. I feel like I'm going to lose all the momentum that I built. And so these are, I think natural human reactions that we're all going through right now.
Wow. It's amazing to hear how you put the positive spin on this. Like it's tough, no doubt. It is hard. We thrive on uncertainty as humans. We want to know what's next, what's going on. And this is a period of serious uncertainty. We do not know a lot of things. We do not. So it's hard, but I love how you put that spin of positivity on it. We're using this time to have that reset, to have that rethink, to have that reassessment of everything. We've been going at some crazy speed before we were made to pause, guys. Mother Earth is like, pause and, take a break, breathe, and, take this all in. So I love that. And I hope that anybody who's out there listening can also look at this situation from that perspective. Have a positive attitude to it. It's not so bad at the end of the day. It will work out for all of our good. So thanks for that. My next question is, what's your take on female leadership? I come from a place of, and I've heard you tell your story severally of how you were in rooms where you felt like you were not a part of, how you felt out of place because of your gender and a couple other things. What's your take on the fact that females need to step in and take their place of leadership? And by leadership, I do not mean by titles or by offices. I mean just by that passion to serve, finding your message, finding your voice, and lending it to the global situation. What do you have to say to women who are scared, who are terrified, who are saying, I might look like a joke? Like before I came on this video with you, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to look. Am I going to look serious, or like, who's this one? What's she talking about again? Who is she in the scheme of things, and who is she to even be listened to? So we have all those doubts, all those what they call imposter syndrome. What is your advice on the importance for female leadership?
So it's been quite an evolution for me in how I've come to terms with imposter syndrome. And naturally for me, I first of all came from a background of poverty. My mother was a single mother. There was addiction in my household. There was violence in my household. My family didn't have a solid education. And so I ended up becoming the first in my family to get that education and to get into the corporate world, really. And on top of being a woman, also coming from that background, I felt very uncomfortable in the rooms that I was finding myself in. I felt like an imposter. I felt like I didn't belong. And as I watched that a lot of women were taking sort of a more backseat role, meaning that I was seeing in the C-suite, it was mostly men that were represented, in politics, mostly men. And this was really the world I found myself in at the Economic Club. And so I at first almost took that as, oh, my spot is to be quiet too. My spot is to host, but not push too hard. And I did that for a few years. And to be honest with you, it made me physically sick because I am a very powerful and outspoken person. That is my natural state. And I've been through a lot in my life and I've seen a lot. And although I may not have, I may not be in the right suit, gender. I definitely understand what I want to see in the world. And so slowly, I started to realize that I was making myself sick. I ended up hospitalized in 2017. My stomach lining was eroding. And what I want to say about that is this was not just a physical sickness. This was years of biting my tongue, biting back my words, and having that really sort of sit in my power center, which is your solar plexus area. And that's where I got ill. And from that point on, I really thought, what's it worth? Is it worth me sacrificing my health and well-being to fit this role? Or can I just be more of myself? And, years ago, I would have never even come on this conversation as the CEO of the Economic Club, representing myself with a toque on. Like, I just wouldn't have done it because, there's this idea that as women in particular, we have to dress a certain way. We have to sound a certain way. We have to have a certain kind of education. We've got to tick every box to be eligible. And I challenge all of us to let those ideas go. I have worked with so many women, so many young people who have the most innovative ideas. And what the world needs now is a new kind of leadership. And I believe that feminine leadership and femininity, which can be in men and women, we all have and can be in touch with our feminine selves, emotional intelligence, nurturing, creativity, intuition. Where do these things belong in business? And I would argue that they really belong. And I find a lot of the times that women, especially younger women, count themselves out of conversations before they've even had them. And that's why at the Lunar Club, we started to gather women monthly, and we wouldn't tell anybody who the special guest was or what the topic was, because I didn't want a woman to hear, oh, the topic is economics, and I'm not going to take part in that because I don't know anything about that. When we just gather blindly and then start talking about these things, most women leave surprised at how much they know, at how much they want to contribute. And so what I really believe right now, and I'm doing it boldly myself, I'm stepping out there, I'm stepping out for a cause, I'm risking that, traditional look of what we're supposed to be. And I'm stepping out and I'm saying, no, these are the issues that I feel are most important. And as I do that, and as women get to see me up there doing that, I'm finding people coming forward, and I'm learning about so many incredible women like yourself that care and want to do things differently. And I just think it's such a time for that feminine power to come through, for men and women to be able to embrace that, to build better business, better society, more balance.
Wonderful. I love what you said about when you have power, and I think we all have power. There's an element of power within every human being because we carry energy. Energy is power. If you have power that you're not using, the power is going to implode inside of you, and that's what I think happened to you. So if you have power, use your power for good. Don't worry about what society thinks of how you should look or how you should show up. Just step out and use your power so it doesn't implode inside of you. That's what I took from your story of having to go through that, where you had serious health conditions because you were bottling a lot of things in. And I hope any woman listening out there will step into her place, use your power, start your conversation. Don't worry about how great you are or how great you look or how people are going to accept you. Go into those rooms, deliver your message, and go ahead. Just move on. Don't beat yourself so much. So thank you so much. And what you said about the feminine economy and feminine leadership, I'm going to ask you the next question on, what is the role of that feminine touch? Because I was having this conversation with my husband after watching one of your speeches, and I said, "Oh, she talks about the feminine economy." And my husband, who is an economist, said, "What? I'm an economist. I don't know I haven't heard the term feminine economy. What is that? Don't tell me you guys are trying to do the pitching men against women and all that kind of stuff." And I said to him that is not what this is about. This is about the nature. And to be honest, we're all born with different natures. God, the creator did that. He put the masculine and he put the feminine so that we can find a way to blend to make sure that all of it coexists. So based on my understanding, the masculine economy, let me bring it to the economic, into the concept of economics, is that drive for competitiveness, for ambition, for profit, that drive for the things that are very glamorous and very challenging. While the feminine nature is that nurturing nature, that nature for care, to just watch something blossom, even though I don't have to go at so much speed. So I just wanted to throw more light on what the blending of the masculine and the feminine will do for our planet and for us as a society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that the first thing that people think when they hear that is they think that I'm talking about women taking over and kicking all men out of positions of power, and that's not it at all. And to be honest with you, I'm quite in touch with my masculine energy. I almost was overcompensating in my masculine energy as a woman in business for a very long time. And what that really means is, yes, the masculine is about pushing and driving forward, and it's about that steady progress, and it's about the self, it's about the individual. And so if we look at our current system, especially in the Western world, we see that capitalism and the way that capitalism has been built over time from industrialization is really rooted in this patriarchal structure. And so when we look right now at the biggest challenges that we face as an economy and as a globe, mental health is one of the first that comes up. So we are in what I would call a mental health crisis. Our labor force is in a mental health crisis. Now, what does that look like? Well, it looks like, according to the Canadian Medical Association, 500,000 Canadians calling in sick to work each week due to mental health, anxiety, stress. All of these things take a toll and they impact our productivity. And so when I look at the mental health piece and I look at what's missing in our sort of masculine economy, we're missing that emotional intelligence. We're missing that ability to collaborate. Why does everything have to be about the individual? Can it be more about the collective, more about the group? So that is more of a feminine way of looking at it. And a lot of men right now are standing up against something called toxic masculinity. Lots of men are rising up and using their voices to say, hey, we don't want to live like this. We don't want to not be able to express our emotions. We don't want our sons and future generations of men to grow up in this world where we have to hold this one particular way of being, and that emotions don't belong in the boardroom and all of this stuff. So the feminine economy is not about going to some extreme. It's about bringing some of the balance in. It's about saying we can still have some of these masculine qualities. They're good. We need some of them. And the divine masculine, so the side of masculinity that is supportive and helpful, we can all tap into that. And we all need that. We need to do our to-do list. We need to go from here or there and get those things. But we also need to incorporate that feminine, which is more about the collective, creativity, collaboration, emotional well-being, and that nurturing. So we need to nurture our systems. We need to nurture our labor force. We need to come back into balance. And I think that is really what I mean by that is it's time for us to unite those two sides and be in that more balanced space. So you can call it the feminine economy. You could also call it indigenizing the economy, which is coming back to the traditional idea that we are not just physical beings, that we are also emotional and spiritual beings, and that we are interconnected to each other in the planet. And when we take that approach with the way that we do business, the result is very different. And I think it's much more balanced.
Much more balanced. Wonderful. Wow, so much insight. So I wanted to feel your pulse on the fact that I have heard this over and over again, and I totally believe it, that our minds are our biggest asset. So I see entrepreneurs who do not necessarily understand this truth. They think my company, my establishment, this big thing I've built is where all the value of my life is in. But your value, your biggest asset is your mind and the minds of those who come to work in alignment with you. So like you said, mental health issues. We need to treat people in our workplaces better. We need to have more emotional intelligence. We need to ask people how they're doing. We need to also bring in the components of spirituality into business and into the workplace. So what's your take on protecting our biggest assets as business leaders, as people who are trying to build? It's not bad building empires, but while we're trying to build empires and leave legacies, how can we protect our biggest assets?
Mm-hmm. So again, I think that we have not really even done enough of a deep dive into the power of the mind and the power of the human brain. It's really our greatest machine, and there's so many aspects of it that are left undiscovered in so many of us. And so I've been really deep in research right now with my co-founder of the Institute around consciousness and expanding human consciousness and how that can solve social and business problems. And so what's really interesting is that most of us, we operate in something called default mode network. So in the neuroscience term, default mode network is when you're kind of on autopilot. So our brain does this to preserve energy and everything else. And so, you know, when you're driving to work and you went through all the lights, you followed all the street signs, you got to the office, but you actually don't remember the drive. It's because your brain went on, you know, default mode network. And so you were able to get there. It was a pattern that your brain was used to. The problem is when we work in default mode network all the time, and we live our lives in that space, we don't have the elevated consciousness to kind of bring awareness to our patterns, our decision making, really look at ourselves. So we end up playing out things over and over and over again, whether they're working for us or not. How many of us have wished to break a certain habit, but we find ourselves doing it again the very next day? So for me, I've been really interested in my brain and interested in how I can reprogram and look at some of my unique traumas or different things that impact my decision making as a leader. And I think that if we can, as you know, an economy and as business leaders, start to really think about the mind and the mind-body connection, and from that place start building out our new plans and our new business models, we will be in a much more advanced, evolved state. And we are evolving as beings. We really are. If you think of the challenges that we faced 100 years ago, and you think of where we were at with, you know, slavery and all the different things, and you think of where we are now, we still have a long way to go, but we are evolving. We're starting to realize just how connected we are. We're starting to realize the importance of those things. But now it's about reprogramming the unconscious bias, all the things that we hold that are just really patterned in our mind right now. Yes.
Amazing. So I have a framework. I am a coach. For those of you who don't know, I'm an organizing and productivity coach. And recently, starting in 2020, since the beginning of the year, I decided to focus all of my attention on business leaders because I am one, and I know what the cost of not taking care of yourself as a business leader. So I decided to, based on my own experience and the experience of some people that I have worked with, to focus all of my attention targeting people who lead a business, whether you run your company and you're just the only employee or you have a Fortune 500. Anybody in a position to create or make decisions for others. And there's a framework I use. It's called the Performance Network. When that network has different nodes, one of the nodes is the block. The block is where we identify all the gaps in self-awareness. Just like you said, we have biases, we have insecurities, we have things in our natural makeup that could pose a threat to the way that we live life. And I just wanted to throw more light on the place of self-exploration and why it is important for leaders in business. Because like you said, we have not explored the mind. We have not fully explored the extent of the human mind, which is of course in alignment with the brain, that there's the capacity of the mind of the brain is limitless. And we need to come to that place of wanting to learn more. And if I'm not wanting to know more, if I'm not trying to be self-aware, if I'm not self-exploring, if I'm not asking questions like, why do I think a certain way? What beliefs did I bring from my childhood that I need to get rid of now? Or what belief updates do I need? What kind of operating system am I running my life with? So what is the place of self-exploration in leadership? And have you gone on any self-exploration journey? How did it turn out? Share with the leaders.
The new economy will require leaders to do is to actually do their own self work and their own self evolution in order to be able to lead from a place of consciousness. And so for me, what my 2017 moment of getting very, very sick led me to really transform my life, because my physical health was the catalyst, but there was so much emotionally that I was holding. And you're absolutely right. I was making decisions based off of things that happened to me when I was a young girl. So for instance, I had sort of programmed into me that it was not appropriate for me to ask for help, because I grew up in a home where my parents and my, caregivers around me were dealing with mental health and addiction. So I learned to just be quiet, and I learned to kind of adapt myself to what other people needed of me. So when I found myself in this place where I was so sick, I was holding back my own words. I was holding back my own value. And that had been very similar to what I did in my household growing up. I couldn't believe that was correlated, but it really was. And so I've been talking to C-level executives about this for the last couple of years, and I actually am I'm warmed by how many people are starting to think this way. The movement of mindfulness and wellness and well-being is one aspect, but the actual neuroscience behind repatterning our brains is really where the work is. And so sometimes people talk about this thing called spiritual bypass. So this idea, if I carry a couple crystals or if I say a little meditation, that I'm going to be a different person out in the world. And the truth is, no, we've got to really go deep in. We've got to first be able to bring awareness, consciousness to the patterns. We've got to go into something called shadow, where we actually can admit to ourselves the things that are not so great that we're doing. And it's not that we're bad people, but we've all found mechanisms to protect ourselves over the years. So when we go back in and we see that, and we can see what we're truly bringing to the picture, we start to better understand other people's value around the table. We start to better understand why we might have traditionally led in a particular way and why maybe that's holding us back at this point. So there's so much to uncover. I work with a bunch of different modalities. I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I think that it's so important for people to do that work. And I work with an actual meditation program where I'm doing inner child work, shadow work, all of those things. And I feel like I'm just such a different leader. And I feel so much happier in my being. I feel like I understand myself. And it doesn't mean that patterns don't crop up that aren't good. They absolutely do. It's a lifelong journey of discovery. You're never done. You're never finished. There's always a new thing around the corner. But what it's led me to as well is to be very able to stand in my own skin, be vulnerable. I can talk about my darkest parts of myself, and I can be open about that. There's no secrets. And I think that has really helped me not only heal my physical body in my own life, but it's helped me to be just such a better leader.
Wow. I love what you said about we're not bad people. We all have gaps. When I coach my clients, I get them to understand this truth. When I'm trying to dig in to help them explain and explore the gaps and the blocks that they carry, I tell them I have my own gaps. Every great person you see in the world out there, sometimes the gaps are just in our natural traits, the way that our brains are wired. We don't all have the same brains. We don't all, neuroscience tells us there are different brain quadrants. And some of us fit into some quadrant that other people don't fit into. So we have this difference in the way that we see the world, in the way that we're made up, in our biological and genetical makeup. And I tell my clients to, when you're exploring, be open-minded to discover and be very clear about articulating your weaknesses so that you can stop the weaknesses and not let them become a threat to everything. And where you're weak, you can leverage the strength of other people. That's why we're not self-dependent, we're not self-existent. We have to also look for people. That's why people hire coaches. That's why you're taking a meditation program now. So I'm just trying to emphasize the importance of understanding that there are gaps there. There's always going to be gaps. There's always going to be blocks. There are always going to be things that are just there to inhibit your growth and to slow you down as a leader and to negatively impact your well-being. They are there, they're just a part of nature. But taking that journey of self-exploration will help you pinpoint those things, like what are my bright spots and my blind spots, so that I can enhance my strengths and reduce my weaknesses. So I love it.
I have a great example to paint this out, that I just want to share with the viewers, because I think it'll help people to understand this, because this is still what we're talking about, quite high level. We're both deep in this work, so our language even is high level. So what I want to describe it like this: I used to use work as a numbing coping. So if you look at like a workaholic sort of behavior, I was portraying that kind of behavior. And I was doing that because I had a lot of trauma from my background, and I had a lot of even just unhappiness in my own personal life. So I was using work as a scapegoat. I was really always busy, because that helped me to not really think about the fact that I was unhappy in my marriage or unhappy in some of the things that I was coping with. As a result, I was pushing my team to do more and more and more and take on this project and that project, because that was how I was coping. But on the alternative, I was burning out some of my team members. They were feeling really overwhelmed by this go, 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 go. And once I was able to uncover the fact that I was actually not just a really productive, successful business person, because especially with over productivity, our society values that right now. We call it the hustle. We think it's good. We think it's part of being successful. And by all means, I was materially and from a business perspective very successful. So hard to see the shadow aspect of that. But once I uncovered that, realized that I was running from these things, started spending more time, I was different to my team. I came back and I said, maybe we don't have to do 5 projects. Maybe let's focus on 1. Do you need a little bit more time for this? Or how do you like to work? What's your preference? And that is something I just didn't have the awareness or the consciousness to do before. And that's how, one very tangible example of how my leadership changed, just because I was able to find out what was happening inside me.
Wow. So touching. So I was at an event. This was sometime last year.
This was 2017. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. You had an event.
Yeah, I had an event. It was last year. I attended an event, and a female entrepreneur stood up to speak to a room full of people, and she had a microphone, and she said something that struck me. She said, I tell my team members, I don't care if you have children, just show up and work. And that was me. That's the way I would sound several years ago, before I had this awakening, before I became more conscious with, treating people better, treating myself better, because how we treat others is a reflection of how we treat ourselves. And I said, but that is not the way a conscious leader should sound. And I, with all due respect, she said it from a place of, you have to be driven, you have to be motivated, but there are other aspects of their lives that we also need to respect. And you can't, if you have 2 people on your team and one doesn't have children, you can't expect the one that has 3 children to show up like the one who has no children. That's where the humanity comes in. That's where bringing that human into the business space, bringing that human way of looking at things into leadership can help people even become their best every day. So I just wanted to throw more light on your example, the example you gave of how you were driving your team members. Sometimes it's from a place of unconsciously not knowing that you were doing these things that are destructive. They might look good in the short term, but they are not sustainable. You can't keep that way for 10, 20, 30 years down the line. And that's why many businesses get to suffer at the end of the day. So I want to go to the next question. What's your take on organizational culture? I believe strongly that we need to redefine what culture in organizations are, because I talk to business leaders, and often when I ask them, what is culture to you? What do you think? What's the culture in your organization like? They would often say things about their policies, like maybe they have an inclusion and diversity policy, they have a great employee engagement policy, all those kind of things that have to do with on paper stuff. And I'm like, where is the place of telling me the people in my place, they show up happier every day, they're happier, they treat each other with more respect, they take care of their health and their mental space? I don't hear that. I hear, oh, we have this great inclusion and diversity policy, or we throw dance parties every Friday or every 2 weeks. I'm like, your practices and your policies do not define your culture. And I'm trying to get leaders to understand that what defines your culture is your people and the beliefs and the behaviors that they show up with every day. So I wanted to throw more light on the need to emphasize the redefinition of organizational culture in today's world.
Yeah, this is a really big one. And this is a hard thing to talk about too, because there are so many organizations that pride themselves on this pen to paper culture. And the truth is I can go to some of the biggest firms in the world that are placing as, top 100 employer or whatever else. And I can go in and talk to people within that organization. And often they'll say, oh, we say we stand for this, but it's not actually the case. Or, when my child is sick and I feel like I've got to miss that meeting, I feel like I'm being penalized for it. And that is the truth. And there is something that I have to say, and that is that no one's to blame for this. And even the organizations that with all their might are trying to incorporate positive culture into their space, our system right now is not designed for balance, period. So I don't care what, the dance party, the mental, the yoga thing at the office, all this stuff, it's actually, it's surface level to the actual deep work that we need to do to restructure. So for example, being a mother and working with women who are mothers and showing up to work and trying to manage and juggle all of that and being able to be present at work when there's something going on with your child or vice versa is impossible. And there's no amount of work culture that's going to make that not be a very hard thing to balance. And the truth is, when people ask me about balance, I say my balance is that I know I'm out of balance. I know that when I'm dealing with my kids, I am not going to show up in the same way that I can to work, and something's always going to fall. But rather than blaming or feeling like we're less than, or it's the company's fault or all the rest, what if we all as human beings took a bigger step back and figured out what kind of culture socially and economically and corporately do we want to integrate all of us to be more in balance? And for me, this really comes down to redefining how we remunerate people. So right now, it's all about going to work and getting money, a paycheck. And that's why we endure all of this crap that so many of us go through. And a lot of us are in jobs that we don't feel super excited about. It's a means to an end. We got to go, we got to work, and that's what it is. But I would love to see us redefine remuneration to also be remunerating our employees with wellness, which means maybe we work less. Maybe we don't care so much about always driving more profit and value back to the shareholder. What if it's actually about, yes, people, instead of the dance party on Friday, I'd like to be able to leave and go get my kids, like, is the truth, or a little bit more time to me is valuable. It's more valuable than money, or in balance with money. So it's about looking at these things, I think, and being unafraid to say that it's not working, because right now every company wants to show that they've got it figured out. But the truth is, if we can admit that we don't, yes, we have a few good ideas and we're all with the best intention. Diversity and inclusion movement is with the best intention, doesn't mean it's working. Doesn't mean people show up and feel like they can be their full self. Doesn't mean that, a woman of color sees her pathway to the C-suite clearly. So these are the things that we need to change. And we have to kind of embrace what's not working, just like the consciousness within ourselves. Oh, I didn't realize I was doing that workaholic thing and whatever else. We got to do that as a collective as well, and be able to admit where we're really lost right now and where we've got to come together and innovate.
Wow. So when I talk with business leaders, I encourage them. It's hard to lead a business. I hate to be pessimist, but it's hard. It requires a lot of dedication. You're bearing a lot of risks. So I encourage them and I tell them, I know that your priority with the people who show up at your organization every day is to ensure that they are enabled to work. So work is a priority. But please, by all means, can you also understand that they have their health, they have their relationships, if they have children, they have to cater to those relationships, they have their mental health, they have their mindset. They need a break sometimes to just go and sit with themselves and do some meditation and do some mental health work. They also have their lifestyle. They need to travel, they need to take vacations, they need to play. All of these components are components of your people's life. Why do you prioritize work? Also show that I care about how you're doing with your health. And I'm going to ask you every now and then, is it every quarter? We're going to ask, how are you doing with your health? Did you set health goals? Did you set mindset goals? Did you set lifestyle goals? How are you doing with your finances as well? Are you saving? Are you planning for the future? Are you building wealth? All of those components can show that you really care about people. And when you do that, people show up better. We're all more profitable at the end of the day. So I love the light that you threw on that. And talking about business and national development and the planet, many businesses, like you said, are driven by the capitalism concept or mindset. So all this whole movement from the broken system of the shareholder capitalism to the stakeholder, where everybody feels like they're a part of this thing. Nobody feels like I am being taken advantage of, like I do all the work and I'm not getting compensated enough. How do you think we can make it level enough so that people feel they are a part of it? Of course, I tell people when organizations invite me to talk to their people, the biggest risk takers will get the biggest rewards. There's no doubt. But how do we make everybody feel that I'm not the founder, I didn't start this company, I'm not the biggest risk taker, but I know that I'm getting rewarded for every single amount of energy, of my life's energy that I'm putting into this?
So, I mean, I have some pretty progressive ideas around what that looks like. And I don't know that they're the most popular right now, but I would say that I believe in shared ownership. So I believe in people actually having parts of ownership in the companies that they're working for, and actually being able to know that if I'm investing myself, my heart, my energy, that I'm actually contributing to something that's growing for my family. I think that is something that's really important. I also believe in this idea of really actually getting to know people uniquely and individually. And that's why the big, huge organizations, you can't keep track of that many people. You can't. And so I think that in sort of a maximum, it's about 150 people that we can manage at one time and have sort of a sense of community. So how do we break down larger conglomerates into smaller, I don't want to call it siloed because that's not always a good thing, but smaller pockets within a company where we can develop more of that community feel and we can get to know people. I may show up as someone who in a meeting is very outspoken, and that's the way that I prove, that I'm paying attention and I'm productive. But somebody who doesn't show up like me may not get the same kind of credit, although they are equally as, engaged and productive, but it doesn't look the same. So we have to really get a sense of people, and we have to want to know people that work for us, and we have to want to know about their lives, know what their challenges are. It's almost like you would do an intake where you would know someone's birth time, what they struggled with their family, where they're at in their home, what their biggest goal and aspiration is, which may not be the company, and really knowing that, and also being able to understand. For me, I work with a lot of young women, and there's a lot of young women that I hire. And I know that it will be a stepping stone for some of them. I don't expect that they're all going to be with me forever. But when they're there with me, how can I get the best out of them? How can they get the best out of me? How can we have this fair exchange where we're both seeing value? And I think sometimes when you're an employee and you feel like you're just a number and you feel like no one really knows you and you don't really have a stake in the end point of what's going on, it's human nature that we don't, like, how are we going to be engaged unless we have a human attachment or respect for the person that we're working for? Maybe that's it. But I think that as beings, we all want to collaborate, we want to be creative, and we want to work towards a common goal together. That's how we're designed, and that's what makes us feel most alive. So how do we bring that spirit into the way that we develop our infrastructure corporately and economically?
Before we go ahead, I think we have some participants. I want to say that if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat. We're going to get Rhiannon to answer the questions. If you have any questions, thanks for joining us. If you have any questions, please do leave your questions in the chat, and Rhiannon will get to those questions when we're ready for that. So to go ahead, I want to ask you one more question. I love what you said about having leaders who really want people to be rewarded for their work. And also, who wants to feel the pulse of the people who show up every day, who wants to get to know their people better. So I say to leaders, ask your people what their vision is, what their life's vision. You shouldn't bother about wanting to know what it is, but just ask them to write their own vision for their life. I mean, you have a fantastic vision for your company and you want them to align with that vision, but also care about letting them explore their own vision. What do they want? And hopefully cross your fingers and pray that their vision aligns with yours. But even if it doesn't, it also makes them feel empowered. Like, okay, this is my vision for my life, but I'm in alignment with this person's vision for the time being, while I'm making plans to explore my own vision. It makes them feel empowered. It makes them show up better every day. So I love what you said about us getting to understand the people who show up to work with us and making them feel more empowered so they can show up better. Another question I want to ask is, when it comes to the triple bottom line of planets, profits, people, what is the one message that you want to leave? Because Rhiannon, people still don't get it. People still don't get it. I was in a conversation sometime last year again, and it was me, two of my friends. One is married with children, and the other doesn't have children. So I remember we were talking about Greta Thunberg and her Fridays for Future movement, and I was so passionate and saying, oh, look at the young generation, teaching older generation what we need to do better. Can we wake up? So I was just having this moment of hoping that I would create that sense of awakening in my friends. And the one, of course, the one who had children was sort of in alignment with the conversation. And she said, oh, Jesmine, I understand because I have children. I'm thinking every time I look at my children of what kind of world we're going to bequeath these children. And the other friend who didn't have kids said, well, I know, I'm trying to understand how you guys feel. I don't have kids, so it's hard for me to come into this space. So I said to her, well, in this context, my children are our children. My children are society's children. That's actually what it is in the real sense. They don't belong to me. So we are all responsible for all the children of the world and all the generations coming after us. So the concept of the triple bottom line and sustainable development, and thinking in terms of what kind of lifestyle choices, what kind of homes are we going to bequeath, what kind of businesses are we going to bequeath to generations coming after us? Are we going to make it harder for those unborn children to leave? So throw more light on that and how important it is for us to have that awakening as soon as possible.
And I think that's exactly it. It's an awakening. And what we know is that, typically speaking, unless there's some big event in our own personal lives that really rocks us, like a health scare or the loss of a loved one or something that kind of shakes us out of that autopilot, it's sometimes hard for us to grasp and grapple with these big, large ideas. So I want to say that whoever doesn't fully feel like they get it, that's okay. And, even for me, myself, I care so much about the planet, but I'm still driving a vehicle. I'm still doing these things because our society is set up that way. And typically speaking, if we don't make it, easy and tangible for people, we can't at mass make change. So I want to also, look at it from that approach. So when we look at the 3 P's of people, planet, profit, I think what we're talking about is a new economic model, and one that is driven by a more conscious consumerism. And so you're absolutely right. It would be looking at the way that we architect our buildings going forward, really thinking about energy, conservation. It would be starting to pay more attention to, our supply chains. So our food and our clothes and how they're made and whose lives are impacted. We have afforded ourselves, many of us, this life where we get to live in a clean home and we get to turn on a tap and get clean water, and we go to the store and there's food there, and we're achieving our goals, and kids are all in lessons and things, and we think that's success. But the truth is that there are people around the world that are suffering to provide us with that lifestyle. And so in the end, a human being that is in some way, whether through their own consumption or whatever their particular agenda is destroying the very planet that gives us life, there's something not right with that. And if we can't figure out how to feel that in our hearts, then all that tells us is that we are disconnected from who we are as a true soul, a being on this planet. And that's okay. That doesn't mean you're bad or wrong or that you don't care. It means that you need to prescribe yourself some more time to sit with yourself, to open up your heart, because as soon as you do that, as soon as you come in alignment with yourself, you are naturally drawn to making things better for everyone. When you love yourself that much and you care for yourself, you care for other people, just like you said. And so I want to, implore the people that don't feel so connected to that movement right now, because they feel like they're exempt from it. You're not exempt. I mean, this global pandemic, I think, has shown us how interconnected we really are. But it is about a true paradigm shift, a true system change, and know that can't happen overnight, but it does require us to think beyond 4-year election cycles. It means to really plan out what is the next 50 years of infrastructure look for the planet. How can we adapt our supply chains to be more kind to people, to be more kind to the planet? I think about, child labor. I think about, again, women around the world that are being exploited to make products that we enjoy in, our modern lifestyle. And all of those things need to come back into balance.
Wonderful. I love how you said, because when I finally had the conversation of this is our society, our children are our children, we all have to take responsibility. I had my friend, she looked very reflective. And I realized that in all sincerity of purpose, she didn't know any better. And I love how you said how we have to push the messaging, how we have to talk to friends. If you've had the awakening, go out there and help somebody else. Talk to people in your community, talk to people in your organization. Make sure that you use your voice, use platforms, social media platforms. On a day like Earth Day, put up a post about how we need to be more conscious, how we need to be more intentional with the way that we treat our planet. But we also have to start from the way that we treat ourselves, because I see, we have lifestyles and we have homes. We have things in our homes, clutter and things that we don't need, we don't use, we don't even like, that we've kept in our lives. And the way that we neglect our own well-being and the well-being of our children just because we want to make more money, we want that paycheck or that power in that position. And all of these things are not things that we want to bequeath to this generation coming after us. We need to do better from all aspects, from our lifestyle to our homes to our businesses. And I love how you said it's okay if you don't get the awakening yet, but those of us who have the awakening, we do everything possible to make sure that we get more people to come into these conversations. Yeah. So it's just been empowering talking to you today, honestly. I want you to give us your final words before final words to any business leader who gets to watch this, who is listening in right now, on how they can embrace harmony of life within themselves while contributing towards harmony of life within all of the components of our ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say my final message would be that the world is waking up right now, and we are in a process of waking. Our planet is starting to vibrate at a different frequency, and the science is there to prove that. The Schumann resonance, which is basically the planet's vibration or heartbeat, has had a major shift in the last couple of months. So we know that something is happening, and I really believe that this is a great period of enlightenment. And I think that whether you're at the front end of that curve or whether you're at, a middle of the bus or back of the bus, we're all going in the same direction. So what I would implore business leaders and people that are listening to do is, if you feel resistant to this message right now, if you feel resistance in your body, it angers you, it upsets you, that probably means that that's gold. That's the gold right there. No matter what, whether we agree with someone or not, we shouldn't have an adverse reaction to somebody's opinion. If we do, it actually means that there's something there for us. There's a resonance there for us. So for business leaders that feel like this is woohoo or out there or too much, I implore you to kind of ground down some of what we're saying and to take the aspects of it that are most challenging to you and start to do some more research, start to do some more reflection, because it's absolutely true that in order to solve all the issues that we face on the planet, poverty, hunger, environmental degradation, all the pieces, it will require each of us to go inward and do our own personal work to become in alignment. All aligned beings will create the system and all the answers. It doesn't take piles of legislation, new rules. It takes individual consciousness to expand the collective consciousness. And that's what it's all about. And it's more simple than we make it. It really, really, truly is.
It's simpler than we think it is. It
Yes.
is simpler than we think it is. We just need to wake ourselves up. Thank you so much, Rhiannon. I want you to tell us briefly about the Lunar Club membership that you're giving to 5 women who are going to tune into this recording and who want to be better leaders. Tell us about the Lunar Club membership, what it stands for.
So the Lunar Club was created by the women of the Economic Club. It was created as a space for us to bring like-minded women together. It's a very eclectic group, and we usually physically gather once a month, but we're starting to go digital. So the Lunar Club is to be a part of the awakening planet, to be a part of all of the things that we've discussed, a group that is led by conscious first, spirit first conversation, interconnection, well-being, and infusing that into business. It's a great place to network. There's incredible C-level women, there's entrepreneurs, artists, and so a lot of the women that have become involved end up working together, doing business together. It's just a really special place, and we are going to start to host digitally. So I'm offering 5 memberships out to any of your listeners, including yourself, to be involved with us. And if you're interested in taking me up on that offer, go to my Instagram at Rhiannon Rosalind and direct message me there and let me know that you're interested, and we will onboard you to get you set up to be involved in the Lunar Club.
How kind of you. Before you said I'm included, I was already saying I'm taking one spot. There's no way I'm going to not grab that spot, because I love community, I love connection, I love building relationships. Imagine that I have you here today. Imagine that we're already friends. Imagine the great things that we could do if we collaborate and work together to make the world a better place. Not to make our pockets bigger, but to make the world a better place. So I love always finding opportunities to connect. So any person listening, please grab this opportunity. Follow Rhiannon on her Instagram, on LinkedIn, across all social media platforms, and connect with her to snag the Lunar Club membership before it is all taken, because one spot is already gone, guys. So make sure you make that move as soon as possible. Thank you so much, Rhiannon. I want to thank you for tuning in.
Thank you so much.
I want to see if we have any questions from the chat. Okay, I haven't seen any questions. All right. So hopefully people will bring their questions after they watch this. So if you watch the replay, you have any questions, Rhiannon and I are here to answer. Our goal is to make sure that we help, as we're on our journey to becoming better leaders, that we help other leaders become better as well. And we all need to work together to help each other. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. My email is jesmine@jessistrom.com. Rhiannon, can you tell them your email address?
Yes, it's Rhiannon, RHIANNON, at economicclub.ca.
Good. If you follow us across our social media platforms, we'll have all of that information available to you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Rhiannon, for coming.
Thank you. Happy Earth Day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Family. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Life Harmony Talk. Please remember to connect with myself and our guest across social media platforms to keep these conversations going. Stay tuned for the next episode. Until then, wishing you life harmony now and always.